The massive alien ships hung in Earth's orbit like dark clouds before a storm. Captain James Walker stood at the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Thunder, his hands clenched into fists as he watched more vessels appear through jump points. Each new arrival made his heart sink deeper. "They're hailing us again, sir," said Tom, his communications officer. The young man's voice shook slightly, betraying the fear they all felt. Walker took a deep breath. "Put them through." The screen lit up with the image of an elder. Their pale, elongated face and silvery eyes were meant to look wise and peaceful, but Walker only saw the cold calculation behind them. "Have your leaders reached a decision, Captain?" the elder asked, its voice smooth as silk. "Earth's answer remains the same," Walker replied firmly. "We won't surrender our independence. We've earned our place among the stars." The elder's expression didn't change, but the temperature on the bridge seemed to drop. "Your species is young, volatile, and dangerous. The Council has decided. Earth will accept our protection, or it will face complete isolation. No trade, no travel, no communication with any civilized world." Walker felt his blood boil. In just 50 years since humans had discovered faster-than-light travel, they had built trade networks, made peaceful contact with dozens of species, and earned respect across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Now the elders wanted to erase all of that progress with a single command. "The people of Earth would rather be isolated than enslaved," Walker said. The elder's eyes narrowed. Strong words from a species that barely understands its place in the universe. "You have 6 Earth hours to reconsider." The screen went dark, and Walker slammed his fist against his chair. "Status report on their fleet." "Over 300 ships now, sir," answered Mary from the tactical station. "Their energy readings are off the charts. We've never seen technology like this." Walker walked to the main viewport, studying the alien vessels. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, all curved lines and gleaming metal. The entire Earth Defense Force had only 40 ships. Fighting wasn't an option. Hours passed like cold molasses. Reports came in from around the world as governments argued and people panicked. Walker watched the news feeds showing crowds gathering in cities, some calling for surrender, others demanding resistance. The weight of history pressed down on humanity's shoulders. With 1 hour remaining, Walker received a priority message from Earth Command. His hands trembled as he read it. "Send to all ships," he ordered. Earth's official response: "We refuse the Council's terms. We stand free." The response was immediate. The elder ships began to move, forming a perfect sphere around Earth. Energy fields shimmed between them, creating a barrier that would trap humanity in their own solar system. But they didn't stop there. "Sir," Mary's voice cracked with alarm. "They're launching something towards the surface. Thousands of small objects entering atmosphere over major cities." Walker watched in horror as the objects breached Earth's atmosphere. But instead of weapons, they were markers, massive floating platforms that descended to hover over every major city on the planet. The elder appeared on screen again, this time without waiting for acceptance. "Since you choose isolation, you will help pay for your own containment. These collection stations will gather resources from your world, a fair tax for the effort of keeping your violence contained. Resist, and we will simply take more." The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the platforms began to glow, sending beams of light into the ground. Mining operations, Walker realized. They weren't just going to cage humanity. They were going to bleed Earth dry. "Record everything," Walker ordered through clenched teeth. "Every second, every action. The universe needs to see what their protection really means." He turned to his crew, seeing the same anger burning in their eyes that he felt in his heart. "They think they're containing a threat," he said quietly. "But they're really just giving us a reason to show them why humans should be feared." Tom looked up from his station, his earlier fear replaced with determination. "What do we do now, sir?" Walker smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Now Now we show them what happens when humans get mad. Send word to all ships. Operation Shadow starts now. Let's show these elders why they should have left Earth alone." The crews straightened in their seats, fury replacing fear. The elders thought they were caging the primitive species. Instead, they had just created their worst nightmare, a unified humanity with nothing left to lose. Commander Ann Miller moved silently through the abandoned mining complex, her steps careful and measured. 3 weeks had passed since the Elder blockade began, and Earth was changing. The collection platforms hung in the sky like eternal wombs, their beams drilling deep into the planet's surface day and night. "Found something," whispered Jack, her tech specialist, pointing to a holographic display on his wrist. Energy readings from the lower levels, different from the usual Elder tech. Miller nodded, signaling her small team forward. They had been tracking unusual signals for days, hoping to understand exactly what the elders were taking from Earth. The official story about resource collection didn't add up. They were too selective about their mining sites. The team descended deeper into the complex. The air grew colder, and their lights cast long shadows on the walls. They passed abandoned human mining equipment, now covered in a strange, silvery substance that seemed to pulse with its own light. "Hold!" Miller raised her fist, stopping the team. Ahead, a soft blue glow leaked from under a heavy metal door. Jack moved forward with his scanning equipment. "No life signs," he reported. "But there's something big in there. Power readings are off the charts." Miller made the call. "Open it." The door creaked open to reveal a sight that made her blood run cold. The large chamber was filled with crystalline structures, each one humming with energy. But it wasn't their beauty that shocked her, it was what they contained. Inside each crystal, suspended like insects in amber, were alien bodies. "They're preserved," Jack said, scanning the nearest crystal. "Different species, different times, but all in perfect condition. This isn't a mining operation, it's a collection." Miller moved closer to one crystal. The alien inside looked almost peaceful, its 4 arms crossed over its chest. A small data panel on the base caught her eye. She wiped away years of dust to read it. "Failed uprising species number 247, she read aloud. "Genetic samples preserved for study. Resistance factors isolated and neutralized." Her hands began to shake as she moved to the next crystal. "Failed uprising species number 248, notable for emotional instability leading to rebellion. Commander," called Sam, her security officer. "You need to see this." At the far end of the chamber stood a massive empty crystal structure. Its data panel was new, clean, and already labeled. "Species number 276. Human." "They're not here for resources," Miller said, her voice tight with anger. "They're harvesting us, studying why species rebel, then preserving samples and wiping them out." She activated her secure communicator. "Captain Walker, are you receiving?" Walker's voice crackled through. "Reading you, Commander. What did you find?" "Evidence, sir. The elders, they've done this before. Many times. We're not the first species they've tried to cage, but we might be the first to see it coming." There was a long pause. "Can you get data from their systems?" Jack was already working on the central console. "Better than that, sir. I'm finding coordinates, locations of other preserved species. Some of them are still alive. Hidden away on prison worlds, their populations controlled, their spirits broken." Miller felt something she hadn't expected, not just anger, but pure, crystalline rage. The elders weren't protectors. They were collectors, preserving specimens of any species that showed too much independence, too much spirit. "Sir," she said, requesting permission to move to Phase 2 of Operation Shadow. "Granted," Walker replied without hesitation. "Contact the resistance cells. All of them. It's time every human on Earth knew what we're really fighting." As her team gathered data and planted charges to destroy the facility, Miller looked again at the empty crystal meant for humans. The elders thought they were being clever, methodical, scientific in their oppression. They didn't understand what they had done. They hadn't just given humanity a reason to fight. They had shown them proof that their fight was just. Every human who saw these crystals, who learned about the fate of other species, would feel the same rage she felt now. And human rage, unlike the anger of other species the elders had encountered, didn't burn fast and fade. It built. It grew. It focused. The elders had preserved hundreds of species that dared to resist, but they had never faced humans before. And humans, Miller knew as she set the last charge, didn't preserve well at all. The makeshift command center buzzed with activity as Captain Walker studied the holographic display. 6 months into the blockade, and humanity had adapted in ways the elders never expected. Underground networks spread across the globe, sharing information and resources. But today was different. Today, they had visitors. 3 alien figures sat across from Walker, their forms hidden under dark cloaks. They had slipped through the elder blockade using technology that even Earth's best sensors couldn't detect. They were survivors, representatives of species that had faced the elders' protection and lived to tell about it. "Your anger," said the tallest alien, pulling back its hood to reveal iridescent scales. "We feel it. It's different from any species we've encountered. Its name was First Light, and its people had been fighting the elders for 3 centuries. Walker nodded. "Commander Miller's discovery of your preserved kin only made it stronger, but we've learned to use it." The second alien, a being of crystalline structures called Clear Song, leaned forward. "Other species burn with rage and lose control. Their fury makes them weak, predictable. But humans, your anger makes you stronger, more focused. It's how we survived our own history," Walker explained. "We learned to channel our emotions, to use them as fuel rather than let them consume us." The third visitor, a small creature with multiple eyes named Deep Thought, moved closer to the holographic display showing Earth's defense network. "We've watched your people, Captain. When the elders took your resources, you didn't break. You adapted. When they isolated you, you didn't surrender. You prepared." Miller stepped forward, carrying a data pad. "We've confirmed what Deep Thought's intelligence suggested. The elders' control systems, their entire network of power, relies on emotional stability. They've engineered their technology to dampen strong feelings, to keep subjugated species docile." Walker smiled grimly. "But they've never dealt with human emotions before. Show them, Commander." Miller activated a new hologram. It showed a human test subject, connected to salvaged elder technology. As the subject's anger rose, the elder systems didn't suppress it. They overloaded. The more intense the emotion, the more unstable their tech became. "Their greatest weapon against other species is useless against us," Miller explained. "More than useless. Our emotions actually disrupt their control systems. Every failed attempt to suppress us makes their network weaker." First Light's scales shimmered with excitement. "This is why we came. For centuries, we'd fought alone, scattered, afraid. But humans, you don't just resist. You thrive on resistance. We've developed new technology," Walker said, revealing a small device. "It doesn't try to control emotions like elder tech. It amplifies them, focuses them, turns human anger into a weapon they can't defend against." Deep Thought's eyes blinked in sequence. "You understand what this means. With this discovery, with your unique abilities, we could free everyone," Miller finished. "Not just Earth. Every world they've caged, every species they've tried to preserve or control. But we need your help." The 3 aliens looked at each other, communicating in ways humans couldn't perceive. Finally, Clear Song spoke. "Our peoples have hidden for generations, watching the elders grow stronger. We thought anger was a weakness to overcome. You've shown us it can be a strength, when properly focused." Walker stood, his presence filling the room. "The elders think they're containing a primitive species. They don't realize they've given us something valuable, a reason to unite. Not just humans, but every species that's ever faced their oppression. First Light rose as well. We will contact the others. There are more like us, species in hiding, waiting for a chance to fight back, with human emotion to disrupt their systems, and human anger to fuel the resistance, Deep Thought added. Miller activated another display, showing the growing network of human resistance cells. The elders wanted to study why species rebel. They're about to get a very practical demonstration. Walker looked at their new allies, seeing hope in their alien faces. The elders had spent millennia perfecting their system of control, building their power on the suppression of emotion and free will. They thought they had encountered every possible form of resistance, but they had never faced human rage before. And soon, they would learn why some fires shouldn't be contained. They should be set free. The elder ship's internal lights flickered as alarms blared through its corridors. Jack moved swiftly through the shadows, his stolen maintenance worker disguise allowing him to pass unnoticed. 9 months of planning had led to this moment. A single human, deep inside an elder command vessel, carrying humanity's newest weapon. Security sweep approaching. Miller's voice crackled through his hidden earpiece. She and her team were monitoring his progress from a cloaked ship nearby, using technology provided by their new allies. Jack pressed himself into an alcove, heart pounding as elder guards rushed past. Their usually calm faces showed signs of stress. The ship's systems had been acting strangely for hours, ever since he'd come aboard. They didn't know that human emotions could affect their technology just by being near it. Even his controlled anxiety was causing disruptions. Central power core is 2 levels down, he whispered, checking the stolen maps First Light had provided. Their shielding is starting to fail. The elders had built their empire on emotional suppression, using technology that damped strong feelings and kept subject species docile. But they'd never encountered humans before. Never dealt with beings whose emotions grew stronger under pressure instead of breaking. Jack reached the central core, a massive chamber filled with crystalline structures similar to the ones they'd found on Earth. But these weren't preservation tubes. They were power sources, each one containing the distilled emotional energy drawn from countless suppressed species. Beginning final phase, he reported, removing the small device from his hidden pocket. It looked simple, just a metal sphere with a glowing core. But inside was the culmination of human ingenuity and alien knowledge. A device that didn't suppress emotions, but amplified them. He placed it near the main power crystal and activated it. Immediately, the ship's lights pulsed erratically. The emotional amplifier began its work, broadcasting Jack's carefully focused anger, not wild rage, but controlled fury at what the elders had done to so many species. The crystal nearest to him began to vibrate. Then crack. Intruder alert. The announcement echoed through the ship. They'd finally detected him, but it was too late. Get out of there, Walker commanded through the comm. The chain reaction is starting. Jack ran as the first crystal shattered, releasing centuries of suppressed emotional energy. The effect cascaded through the ship's systems. More crystals broke, each release amplifying the effect. The Elder's own technology, designed to contain and suppress feelings, was being overwhelmed by pure human emotion. He reached the emergency pods just as the ship's artificial gravity failed. Behind him, he could hear the Elders shouting in panic. Their perfect control was breaking down. The emotional feedback was spreading through their entire network. Data confirmed. Miller reported as Jack's pod launched into space. Their whole command structure is destabilizing. Every ship connected to their network is being affected. Through the pod's window, Jack watched the massive Elder vessel's lights flicker and die. Their supposedly superior technology, built to suppress the very emotions that made species want to rebel, was useless against focused human anger. All teams, execute Phase 2, Walker ordered. Across the blockade, hidden resistance ships emerged from stealth. Each carried human crews, their emotions amplified by the new technology. The Elder fleet, their systems already destabilized by the command ship's breakdown, began to fail. First Light's fleet is moving in, Miller announced. Deep Thought reports their hidden forces are ready. Clear Song's people have activated the liberation protocols. The Elder blockade, undefeated for millennia, was falling apart. Their own technology turned against them by the very emotions they had tried to suppress. They had spent centuries preserving specimens of species that dared to resist, studying why they rebelled. Now they were learning firsthand. Jack's pod was picked up by Miller's ship as the battle unfolded around them. The Elders had believed their power was absolute, their control perfect, their technology unbeatable. They had thought humans were just another primitive species to be contained and studied. Instead, they had caged a force they couldn't understand. Human emotion, tempered by adversity, strengthened by resistance, and now focused into a weapon that was breaking their empire apart. The Elder Council chamber, untouched for thousands of years, now shook with the force of battle. Captain Walker stood at the entrance, watching as centuries of oppression began to crumble. Behind him, human soldiers and alien allies fought together against Elder security forces. Their shared anger, amplified by human technology, made the very walls tremble. Western sector secured, Miller reported through the comm. First Light's people are freeing the preserved specimens. Some of them are still alive. Walker moved forward, his boots crunching on shattered crystal. The Elder's grand hall was designed to inspire awe. Massive columns reached toward a ceiling that sparkled like stars. But now those stars flickered and died as their power failed, destroyed by the very emotions they were meant to suppress. Your species continues to surprise us, an Elder voice echoed through the chamber. The High Elder emerged from shadows, its usually perfect appearance now disheveled. No other race has ever reached this chamber. No other race has dared. No other race got angry enough. Walker replied, his hand steady on his weapon. You pushed us too far, made us too mad. The High Elder's silver eyes narrowed. Anger is a primitive emotion. We evolved beyond it millennia ago, built an empire on peace and order. You built an empire on suppression and fear, Walker corrected. You forgot what anger is for. It's not just destruction. It's motivation, protection, justice. Around them, more crystals shattered as the emotional feedback grew stronger. Each broken crystal released centuries of stored feelings, adding to the wave of human amplified emotion that was destroying the Elder's control. Look at what you've done. The High Elder gestured to the destruction. Is this your justice? Destroying what took us thousands of years to build. A group of freed aliens entered the chamber, led by Clear Song. Their crystal bodies reflected the chaos around them. They'd found the control center, Clear Song reported. The network is failing across the galaxy. Every suppressed world, every controlled species, they're all breaking free. The High Elder stepped back, genuine fear showing on its ancient face. You don't understand what you're doing. Without our control, there will be chaos, violence, disorder. We understand perfectly, Walker said, moving closer. We understand that growth comes from freedom, not control. Strength comes from facing emotions, not suppressing them. Every species you tried to preserve, every civilization you tried to cage, they're all about to teach you that lesson. Reports flooded in through the comm. Deep Thought's hidden fleets were emerging across the galaxy, striking at Elder control points. First Light's people were freeing more preserved species. Humanity's emotion-amplifying technology was spreading, carried by Miller's teams to every corner of Elder space. The High Elder raised its hand, energy crackling around its fingers. We can still contain this. Start over. Your species could be given a place of honor if you help us restore order. Walker laughed, a sound that made more crystals crack. You still don't get it. We don't want a place in your order. We want everyone to have a chance to find their own way. Even you. The energy around the Elder's hand flickered and died as another wave of emotional feedback swept through the chamber. The mighty being stumbled, overwhelmed by the feelings it had spent millennia learning to suppress. The preservation chambers are all empty, Miller's voice reported. The storage crystals are breaking down. Their whole empire was built on stolen emotional energy, and now it's all breaking free at once. Walker watched as the High Elder sank to its knees, surrounded by the ruins of its power. Human soldiers and freed aliens filled the chamber, their combined presence making the last crystals shatter. "You wanted to study why species rebel," Walker said to the fallen elder. "You preserved specimens, analyzed resistance, tried to find a way to stop it from happening, but you never understood the most important thing about emotions, especially anger." The High Elder looked up. "And what is that?" Walker smiled as the last of the Elder's power crystals cracked. "They're not meant to be contained. They're meant to be felt, understood, and used to drive change. Humanity didn't just get angry. We got angry for a reason. And now the whole universe is about to feel what freedom really means." The battle for the Elder homeworld turned the sky into a canvas of fire and light. Miller watched from her command ship as centuries of oppression burned away. The Elder defense grid, once thought unbeatable, collapsed under the combined assault of human emotion and alien determination. Another preservation facility found in Sector 7, Jack reported, his voice tired but determined. "The freed species are joining the fight. They're using the anger from their imprisonment as fuel for the amplifiers." Miller nodded, watching as another Elder fortress fell. They had discovered thousands of preservation chambers hidden across the planet. Each one held hundreds of specimens, the best and brightest of species that had dared to resist. The Elders had kept them as study subjects, trying to understand the spark of rebellion. Now that spark had become a fire. "Elder ships approaching from the north," Tom called out. "They're trying to reach the backup control center." "Not today," Miller said. She activated the ship-wide comm. "All human crews, focus your emotions. Remember what they did to Earth. Remember every species they tried to cage. Remember and let them feel it." The emotional amplifiers hummed to life. Unlike the Elders' technology that suppressed feelings, these devices took human emotions and turned them into weapons. Anger became energy. Determination became disruption. The very feelings the Elders had tried to study and contain were now tearing their civilization apart. First Light's ship moved alongside Miller's. "The prison worlds are all rising up," the alien commander reported. "Every species they tried to break is fighting back. Your human anger gave them courage." Through the viewport, Miller watched Elder ships tumble from the sky, their systems overwhelmed by the emotional feedback. The Elders had built their empire on the idea that feelings could be controlled, studied, and suppressed. They never imagined those same feelings could be turned against them. "Commander," Jack called out urgently. Massive energy spiked from the surface. "They're trying something big." The Elder homeworld surface began to glow. Ancient machinery, buried for millennia, powered up. The Elders' last resort. A planetary emotional suppression field that could reach across their entire empire. "All ships, full power to amplifiers," Miller ordered. "They want to suppress the galaxy. Let's show them what human emotions can really do." Every human ship in orbit activated their amplifiers at maximum strength. The crews focused their feelings, not wild, uncontrolled rage, but the cold, steady anger that had built over months of occupation. The determination that had grown stronger with every discovered preservation chamber. The fury that had sharpened into a weapon. The two forces met in the atmosphere, Elder suppression against human emotion. The sky itself seemed to crack. Energy coursed through the clouds like lightning. The Elders' machinery strained against the wave of focused human feelings, amplified by technology, and strengthened by justice. "Their field is failing," Deep Thought reported from another ship. "The suppression system can't handle this much emotional feedback. It's overloading." Miller watched as the Elder machinery began to break down. Massive structures that had enforced their will for thousands of years crumbled under the weight of unleashed feelings. The very weapons they had created to study and control emotions were being destroyed by those same emotions. "All preserved species are now free," Clearsong announced. The prison worlds are liberated. The Elder Control Network is completely collapsed. From the surface, desperate Elder ships tried to escape, but they found no safety in space. Every species they had ever tried to suppress was waiting for them. Every civilization they had tried to preserve was now fighting back. And leading them all was humanity, the species that had turned anger from a weakness into a strength. The High Council is requesting terms, Jack reported, surprise in his voice. Miller looked at the burning sky, at the freed species fighting alongside humans, at the crumbling remains of an empire built on emotional suppression. The elders had preserved specimens of resistance for study. They had tried to understand why species rebel, why they fight, why they refuse to be controlled. Now they were learning the hardest lesson of all. Some things aren't meant to be preserved. Some feelings can't be contained. And when humans get truly angry, even the oldest empire in the galaxy learns to tremble. 1 year after the fall of the Elder Empire, Captain Walker stood in the newly built Galactic Assembly Hall. The massive room was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, some newly freed from preservation chambers, others emerged from hiding, all united by their shared experience of Elder oppression. The last Elder Control Center was dismantled yesterday, Miller reported, standing beside him. Their technology is being converted for peaceful use. The emotional amplifiers are being modified to help species recover their suppressed feelings, not weaponize them. Walker watched as First Light addressed the assembly, its scales shimmering under the light of 1,000 suns streaming through the crystal dome. The new hall had been built from the shattered remains of Elder Control crystals, transformed into windows that let in the light they once tried to block. Who would have thought, Jack said, joining them, that human anger would end up saving the galaxy? The Elder Empire had left deep scars across the stars. Countless worlds were still recovering from centuries of emotional suppression. Species that had been preserved in crystals were learning to live again, but something new was growing from the ashes of control, understanding. The humans taught us something valuable. Clear Song spoke to the assembly, its crystalline form reflecting rainbow patterns across the hall. They showed us that emotions aren't weaknesses to be contained. They're strengths to be embraced. Deep Thought, now leading a coalition of formerly hidden species, added its voice. The elders preserved specimens of rebellion, trying to study why we resist. They never understood that the very act of preservation, of trying to contain and control, only makes the need for freedom stronger. Walker stepped up to the speaker's platform. The room fell silent. Humans were now known across the galaxy, not as primitive newcomers, but as the species that had turned their own anger into liberation. A year ago, we were trapped in our own solar system, he began. The elders thought they could study us, preserve us, control us like they had done to so many others. They didn't understand what happens when humans get angry. Movement at the back of the hall caught his attention. A group of elders entered, not as rulers now, but as equals. Their once perfect appearance was simpler, more natural. Without their emotion-suppressing technology, they were learning to feel again. But this victory isn't about anger alone, Walker continued. It's about what we do with our emotions. The elders tried to preserve specimens of resistance. Instead, they preserved the very strength they feared, the determination to be free. Miller activated a hologram showing the galaxy. Thousands of points of light marked freed worlds, liberated species, restored civilizations. The Elder Empire of Control had been replaced by a network of cooperation. We're not here to build another empire, Walker said. We're here to ensure no species ever faces preservation again. No civilization has to hide their feelings. No world has to fear being studied and suppressed. The assembly erupted in approval. Species that once hid from Elder Control now stood proud. Races that had been preserved in crystals now lived and breathed and felt. The very emotions the elders had tried to suppress now flowed freely through the galaxy. A small group of preserved species, recently awakened, approached Walker after the speech. Their eyes held the pain of centuries in stasis, but also hope. "You showed us that anger can be more than destruction," one said. "It can be the force that breaks chains." The former High Elder, now just another representative in the assembly, stepped forward. "We spent millennia trying to understand why species rebel. We preserved specimens, studied resistance, sought to perfect control. In the end, humanity taught us the simplest truth: you cannot preserve what needs to be free." Walker looked out at the gathered species. Former enemies, now allies; preserved specimens, now living beings; hidden resistance, now open friends. The Elder Empire had tried to create perfect order through control. Instead, they had united the galaxy through their own opposition. Humanity's anger had cracked their power. But it was humanity's understanding of emotions, the knowledge that feelings weren't weaknesses to suppress but strengths to embrace, that had truly changed the universe. The preserved specimens were free. The hidden species had emerged. The controlled worlds were liberated. And across the galaxy, a new age was beginning. One where emotions were no longer preserved in crystals, but lived and breathed and changed the stars themselves.